Going? Okay, cool. Well, first off, give us your name and your title.
Okay. This I write under the name R.C. Harvey, and I have a online magazine at my website, which is rcharvey.com. Yeah, original thinking. Anyway, I do that. I've published about 10 or 12 books on the history of comics, both comic strips and comic books. And I've been writing about comics for about 30 years, so I've been around a long time.
Have you seen any specific specific changes that grab you the most, or has everything pretty much stayed the same as comic books have come out and heroes come and go?
Oh no, comics have changed a lot in the last 40 years or so. I read them as a kid, which meant I was reading them in the 40s and 50s. And I started reading them again in the 70s. And it was all pretty much the same thing, except that the stories were a little bit different. Thanks to Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, the superheroes got personalities. Instead of being cardboard cutouts of what a hero should be, they had difficulties of psychological and personal nature. So the stories were more interesting. But the most spectacular thing to me that happened was in about the early 80s. You began to see the emergence of individual styles in the artwork in comic books. Until then, most comic book artists drew in what was called the house style of their publisher. All the DC comics were drawn in the house style of DC, which meant unless you were a really astute visual detective, you probably didn't recognize the work of one artist over another. They all look pretty much alike.
Okay.
But starting in the 80s, I want to say probably due to Frank Miller, his work on Daredevil, you began to see distinctive individual drawing styles being published by major comic book publishers, DC, Marvel, and the rest of them. And that has resulted in 20 years since then, 20 or 30 years since then, in the emergence of really spectacular artwork in comic books. High quality, individual, stylistic achievements. And from my point of view, I'm a cartoonist as well as a historian, and maybe we should wait till that's over. Does your microphone pick up all that?
It does, but I think we can filter it out, so you can keep going if you'd like.
No, wait a minute.
Gotta love the broadcast overhead speakers.
What's an FPU coordinator?
Oh, really?
Sounds like a guy's shirt.
Oh.
Anyway, I'm a cartoonist as well as a historian about cartooning. And so the thing that interests me as much as anything is what the artwork looks like. I'll buy a comic book because of the pictures in it. And I may never read it because I enjoy looking at the pictures and seeing the achievement of these guys, young guys coming along.
That's incredible. Is there any... have you think that with all these changes in mind, have the comic books gotten better?
Oh, yeah. There's no question they got better. They got better in their appearance, and they also got better written. Partly because you had people writing comic books who came out of television writing or novel writing or movie writing. It used to be the other way around. A comic book writer aspired to write movies. They still do. But now you have kind of cross-fertilization going back and forth. So you get very good writing. The other thing that makes possible good writing is that the comic books, very often a comic book title will publish a short mini-series of, say, 5 issues on a given story arc, which permits the writer to concentrate on the development of his story instead of figuring out ways to keep going into the 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th, 250th issue. So they can construct a story that has a beginning, and a middle and an end, instead of having these unending slugfests, which is what distinguished Marvel Comics in the early days.
Now, growing up, obviously, what was one of your favorite comics that you liked seeing evolve? What was one of your favorite comics you liked seeing change and kind of evolve along with this process of how many you've seen?
Well, I don't have a favorite comic book title anymore.
Okay.
I tend to buy comic books because of the artwork or the story.
Okay.
Marvel has a new Max title. It's up to about 10 or 12 now, about Sergeant Fury, and I buy every issue of that. I like the drawing, and I like the stories, which are very gritty, and they don't belong in a children's, adventure book. These are written for adults, and the books are very, very good. I'm not a big fan of science, of supernatural stories. Zombies sort of leave me cold. Terrible story. Anyway, but I pick up like a series of comics because of the title. I mean, because of the artist or even sometimes the writer who's working on it. When they run out of that series, then I probably stop buying it. I'm buying a title called Hawkeye. I'm trying to think. I think the writer is Brian Azzarello or Azzarello, and he writes a good comic book, but it's also drawn by a guy, his last name is AJA. Superb artwork, very simple, but he understands the storytelling mechanism of comics. He understands how to break the action down, and he works with his writer on that too, and he understands on how to vary camera distance for dramatic emphasis and so on. So I enjoy that. Probably the artist is going to leave that title after a while, and maybe the writer will too. Then I'll drop the title.
Okay. Well, I am pretty much done. Calvin, you got anything?
I can explain what's on my cap.
Oh, okay. Okay, I did notice your cap, but what's going on with that sucker there?
Well, it says artist, and then there's a swear word.
Swear word, then cartoons.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, the origin of that is the famous utterance of Boss Tweed in New York in about 1870.
Okay.
And he was being pursued by a cartoonist named Thomas Nast, who drew cartoons exposing the corruption that Boss Tweed was perpetrating on the city.
Okay.
And Boss Tweed really worried about this. And his henchman asked him, "Why worry about this cartoonist?" And he said, "Well, my constituents are mostly illiterate, so they can write whatever they want about me. They can't read, but they can understand those damn pictures." So that's how that is.
Oh, that's awesome.